Sales reps, you know that complex deal you're working on? Don't screw up the proposal. It needs to make a case for value that matches the complexity of the deal. So today we're going to talk about the concept of component value. And this is a really critical concept when your prospect is going to make a decision based on your proposal by making their decision in multiple components that together add up to their decision. In other words, they're not just making one big decision, they're making several decisions as they decide on your proposal. Now, I want to begin with an important acknowledgement. Right? Is this concept of component value going to be relevant to every single proposal that you do? Well, honestly, probably not. You know, some deals really are just kind of one simple decision. But is it going to be important for some of your most important deals? I will bet that it is. And I think that kind of gets to the deeper value that I want us to get out of today's conversation. I really want to up-level the way that your team thinks about proposals. So if you kind of think about the way that a typical team approaches proposals, they've really kind of got, you know, one way that they do proposals. For big important deals, the numbers are bigger, but it's still basically the same idea of the way that they do their proposal. But really good teams, they get inside their prospect's decision process and they really create proposals that match that decision process. And really, they're really useful and they're really persuasive because they match that process. And this idea of component value is a great example of how to kind of get to that next level. So let's kind of define the concept. So the idea here is that you wanted to understand the components in which your prospect is going to make their decision. So let's take a simple example. So in a simple deal, there's really just a single decision, right? The prospect is going to decide whether their company should buy, and they're either going to purchase or not purchase, right? And so this is not a multiple component decision. It's just the one. But especially for, you know, big complex deals, oftentimes there are multiple decisions that the prospect is going to make in the course of deciding on your proposal. And effectively, they're going to decide in multiple components. So this is an example of a multiple component decision. So they might say, okay, are we going to buy for our finance team? Are we going to buy for the operations team? Are we going to buy for the sales team? So there's really three different components to this decision. And then when they decide, they're going to decide to purchase for finance or not, or operations or not, sales or not. And so they might decide to purchase for all three, just for two, or only for one, or not for any of them. But the key point here is that if you don't understand the different components in which they're making their decision, you are sacrificing a lot of your ability to persuade on this deal. So let's look at some ways that you can address the different decision components that a prospect might have. So this is our first option. And the first option is to address the different decision components in your summary slides. Now recall that your summary slides, these are the slides that kind of summarize the value that you provide. They're typically at the beginning of your proposal and also at the beginning of all of your other conversations. So let's do a compare and contrast. So in a typical single decision deal, the way that your summary slides would look is they would be addressing the company as a whole. So you would say, okay, these are the three problems that we solve for your company as a whole. These are the three solutions that we offer for your company as a whole. These are the three impacts that we offer for your company as a whole. Okay, that's a single decision. Now, if we were going to address multiple decision components in the summary slides, instead of looking at the whole company, we would look at each component. So our first summary slide would be the problems, solutions, and impacts for the first component. The second summary slide would be the problems, solutions, and impacts for the second component, and the third for the third, right? And so for example, it might be, the first slide might be, these are, let's look at the finance team. These are their problems, solutions, and impacts. The second slide might be, this is the operations team. Let's look at their problems, solutions, and impacts. The third slide might be, this is the sales team. Let's look at their problems, solutions, and impacts. And what you're looking for here is for the reader to go look at this, and they look at the first slide and they're like, yeah, that makes sense for the finance team. We'll buy for them. Check. And then they look at the second slide. Oh, yeah, that makes sense for the operations team. We should buy for them. Check. And then the third slide. Yeah, that makes sense for the sales team. We should buy for them. Check. And so this is a really good option when the different decision components are really pretty separate, right? And they really can just kind of go down through this kind of checklist kind of decision process. So now let's look at a second option. This is where we're going to address the different decision components in the body of the proposal. This is a good option when the decision components are not totally separate from the company as a whole. In other words, they're really kind of tightly linked to the decision for the company as a whole. So first, let's kind of look at the different parts of our proposal, and then we'll kind of highlight where the decision components fit in. So recall from our last video, we typically start off by our proposals by talking about company value. Then we differentiate against the competition. Then we'll put in our section on component value. We'll put in our pricing options. We'll say what's not included, and then we'll talk about the decision plan. Okay, now let's unpack the key parts. So our first section here, our company value, this is going to be a set of summary slides that cover value to the company in general. In other words, we're not being too component specific. We're saying, hey, this is a good product for your company in general. And then in our component value section, we'll talk about how the product's value applies to each decision component. Like what is special about the finance team, or what is special about module A of our product, and what's special about module B, and what's special about module C. And then in our pricing options section, we will discuss how our pricing options make it attractive to purchase for all three of those teams or for all of those modules of the product. So this is a great way to do it if the component decisions are they're linked to the overall company decision. So to learn more about PSI selling, head over to our website at www.psiselling.com. When you're there, you'll see resources on discovery, negotiation, hiring, demos, persuasive sales writing, and on onboarding as well. And with that, most importantly, as always, happy selling.